And we welcome you to another edition of This is Wrestling. And today it is part one, WWE Unreal, the series on Netflix, and myself and Zach McGibbon going to break down each episode here on This is Wrestling. Love when we're able to do this type of stuff. Zach gets us away from the everyday recap of the weekly stuff, and we can dig into a documentary series again put out by Netflix with the WWE. Looking forward to this one. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Mr. Versage. Yeah, these kind of episodes that we're able to do, I always enjoy, because not only, as you mentioned, we are able to veer off from the weekly content and looking at the different episodes of TV each week from the wrestling promotions, but also I think this stuff is kind of evergreen, where you can kind of go back and listen to it if you figure out watching WWE Unreal later on a few months out and you wanted to check in later on. You have this here as well. So these are always interesting episodes, something different for the good listener.
So when this series was first put out that it was going to happen, it's the world of professional wrestling. It's reality television. And we all know that reality television, usually, Zach, is anything but. So I'm eager to know your perspective on when you first heard about the series, what you expected and what you think the fans expected from a quote unquote reality series put out by the WWE.
Well, when they were first describing Unreal and trying to go after that drive to survive sort of idea, that's what you see with a lot of these sports promotions, sports leagues now, is that they're trying to find that drive to survive like reality show to bring in some new eyeballs and try and get new fans from a different perspective. And so this is what I thought this was for WWE, where it's a chance for them to kind of broaden out and try and reach new people with this reality series and pulling back the curtain and try and learn a little bit more. I was going into this with a little bit of hesitancy, only because we know with WWE that even when they do these quote unquote reality stuff, or they try and do these documentary deals, they still is a level of kayfabe that's kind of put in, where we'll show you some stuff, but we're not going to show you everything that you need to know. So coming into this, I was wondering how much of the curtain would they actually pull back? What would they show in terms of process and how things are put together when it comes to storylines, and what they wouldn't show, and what they were like, all right, we'll show you this, but this stuff here that we do, this is going to remain between us as the wrestling company.
And so one of the interesting things about this series for me before it started is you have other reality television series, and certainly the sports, the Drive to Survive is the one that everybody compares to, because that's the one that took F1 and made it the most popular sport in the world. So, yeah, soccer fans, I said that. So the ability, though, for sports to be able to do that like F1, I think, and this might be a little bit naive, but most fans are given what F1 gives them, and that's it. So not a lot of them know the real stories behind the scenes. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. If Drive to Survive was, they decided to put it out, most people would think, okay, well, this is everything that happens behind the scenes, because they don't give a lot else. It's a very difficult sport, I think, to get into, knowing every nook and cranny behind the scenes. And other sports are kind of like that too. I didn't, us living in Canada, I didn't love the hockey ones that were put out, because you kind of knew that's not everything that happens, but yeah, we're smarter when it comes to the world of hockey. So I get that they're catering to people who don't know, but my suggestion here before it came out was that I don't know if I know of a fan base that does know everything that's happening behind the scenes as much as a wrestling fan. And that's because we're a little bit crazy, and we want to know everything, and we like to be able to put things together, because in the end, it's not a sport where you don't know what's going to happen. I'm watching Full Speed, the NASCAR, just finished it on Netflix, season 2. When it's going on and they're filming, they actually don't know who's going to win the championship. But in wrestling, it's different. And I think fans understand that it's different. And fans, for the most part, the ones who are really, truly into it, are able to put together 90% of what's going to happen before it happens. And they know already what's happening behind the scenes. So I guess that's a long-winded way, Zach, of saying I had a little bit of skepticism going into this, because it's like, yeah, you can show me what is quote unquote really happening, but I already know better. And most people that are wrestling fans know better. Now, the casual fan certainly doesn't, and that's who they're appealing to. But maybe just a quick comment on, I don't want to call us smart, because we're not as wrestling fans, but what we are eager to find out every little piece of information, which I think makes a show like this a little bit harder to put out and say, hey, this is exactly what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, that was going to be the thing for me, is you obviously you are going to try to appeal to a different kind of base, but you are also going to have the wrestling fan that's going to tune in and be like, all right, what's going on here? What else new are they going to show that we don't already know? In the sense that, you know, we as fans, I think we're pretty well plugged into what's going on when it comes to behind the scenes, on the screen, that sort of stuff. So going into this, I was wondering, well, what are the different angles that they're going to look at? What are the different ways are they going to show the behind the scenes stuff? And I will say, in this first episode, there were some things that I did find interesting in what they showed, specifically when it comes to, you know, they were talking about the debut on Netflix on Raw, and they were showing the CM Punk Seth Rollins main event, and they were showing how they had the agent off in the corner and with the headset on, talking with the referee and timing out the match. It was Chris Park that was kind of looking at everything. And so some of that was kind of interesting in terms of, you know, actually seeing it in process and seeing how it all works.
Yep.
But other elements, it was like, you know, it's stuff we've heard before. You know, you have Triple H going out there and telling the cameras, oh, we're going out there to entertain. We're trying to make sure that the fans get what they want and get the best quality show. And, you know, it's stuff that we as wrestling fans have heard time and time again whenever these wrestling documentaries come out.
You know, so the show starts with Triple H and, you know, what his real name is and what people call him. And right away, Zach, so I am now put off right away, because this is something not in wrestling, but in a lot of aspects of life that grinds my gears, that really gets under my skin. When people say that things are more like complex, or that they're a little bit more difficult than people really understand, I think it's very arrogant to say that in all walks of life. It's this coming across like you don't understand because you have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. But we're not going to tell you actually what goes on really behind the scenes, but you don't get it. You just don't understand. When people talk like that, it's this way of talking down to people, like I'm better than you because I know more than you do. And it's like, well, first of all, you're starting this show off and you're Triple H that runs everything. Of course you know more than us. Like, we get that. You don't need to tell us that.
Yeah.
So already I'm put off by this. But anyway, I think one of the things it starts with after Triple H is they start in the home of Cody Rhodes. And I think this was a good way to begin things, of like, here's Cody and here's his wife and here's his daughter. And it's around Christmas time. And I just thought that this was a good way to introduce people to what they were trying to do, and that Cody was the face of the company. And that was important to establish. Like, okay, here is right now our biggest star. And we're going to start with him behind the scenes. Do you think Cody comes off well in episode 1?
Yeah, I thought the wrestlers that they did showcase in episode 1, not only just Cody, but they also did a showcase of Rhea Ripley as CM Punk. I thought they came off pretty well, especially Rhea Ripley. But to answer your question about Cody, I definitely thought that kind of learning a little bit more about him and his background, and I thought it was. Obviously, it's sort of establishing, okay, these are the guys, these are some of the main focused wrestlers in the company. And we want to let the audience know that's tuning into Unreal that these are the guys that are being primarily focused. And these are the people we're going to be following in this first season of Unreal of, okay, this is the journey we're going to follow with a lot of these wrestlers. Here's who they are, their backgrounds, where they come from, and how they travel, some of the different things that they do, some of the characteristics about them, what makes them unique, what makes them different. I like this when it comes to some of the wrestler showcases that they did to start off the show and get a little bit more of an insight into the pro wrestlers.
Couldn't agree with you more about Rhea Ripley. And I think when you show people and their injuries and people are vulnerable in those spots and they are okay with being vulnerable, Rhea Ripley comes across very real in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
That there are injuries that happen. She is just a normal person. She's freaked out by the injuries. This is the life that she leads away from the ring. That's what people want. If they want to see behind the scenes, I thought she was the best person in this show. I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that if you looked into what Rhea Ripley's character is on screen and then you followed her behind the scenes and things that she's going through and the real emotion that she shows throughout this series, I think is incredible. So already about 20 minutes in, that's my first big takeaway is how great Rhea Ripley's coming across.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to get to what you talked about because episode 1 to me, like if somebody asked me about it after, which is why we're doing a recap, the main thing would be exactly what you kind of touched on at the beginning, the gorilla position. Because the gorilla position is so important in the world of professional wrestling. And this was, to me, easily the best part of the first episode, where they basically walked you through who is in the gorilla position, which is the position right before they go out on stage behind the curtain, and what goes on there, like the intricacies of what Triple H does and where Bruce Pritchard sits. And then there's Billy Kidman. And as you talked about, Chris Park, who is formerly Abyss in TNA, and how he's producing the matches. Also, Michael Hayes and Bobby Roode were there, and everything that goes into who's talking to the referees who have to translate the information to the wrestlers. I thought this was mechanical in a good way of here is the process that we go through. Super interesting, even to somebody like me, let alone the casual fan who doesn't know what the gorilla position is.
Right.
I thought this was really well done, Zach, to give everybody who's a casual or a hardcore fan kind of a precise breakdown of what happens. What did you take away from the gorilla position segment specifically?
Yeah, you know what it kind of reminded me of? It's funny we talk about Drive to Survive, but another sort of influential sports documentary series that I was also thinking of when I was watching this. There was a lot of elements of Hard Knocks in this.
Yep.
Where, in Hard Knocks, when they go into training camp, you go into the coach's room or you have where they have all the players kind of sitting off and they're looking at plays, and you got the coaches yelling at the guys being like, oh, this over here, you missed this assignment, you missed this block. This is kind of like what it was here for wrestling, in the sense that you had these agents going in and they're on the headset and they're talking about, oh, we got to make sure that we hit our times on this. Or they showed a segment with Jacob Fatu where he pushed a fan and people in the gorilla position are like, oh my gosh, he's pushing a fan. Tell him not to do that. Then them realizing, oh, it's extras that are there. It's okay. But make sure that he's aware of the future, that he can't just do that to everybody. So stuff like that. There was a lot of elements of Hard Knocks that I found when I was watching this part that were interesting. And again, once you actually see it in real time, I think we've heard it as wrestling fans so often of how things work, but to actually see it in action and see how things are done was definitely the most interesting part. But there is, as a wrestling fan, I will say, and I think it'll kind of lead into some of the other elements of this review, just from a general wrestling sense, while it was definitely interesting to see how it was all working and how things were kind of flowing together with the agents and, Triple H kind of giving commands as well, the communications with the referee and all that, I still came away thinking, man, there are some elements of this as a wrestling fan where it's like, man, this is a little bit overproduced. I think there's a little bit too much going on.
Like
in
what?
some cases, like in the sense of, I'll jump back to the Seth Rollins CM Punk main event where it's like, oh, the agents saying, okay, now we go to this sequence. All right, we've removed this sequence. We're going to go to this sequence and whatnot. It's very much kind of taking away, the wrestlers calling it in the ring and calling their match, and more, okay, we have to abide by what the agent and us put together in this match, and we have to try to abide by this. So there's a little bit of elements there where it's like, I don't think we need an agent to be, communicating everything when it comes to in the match in terms of, like, I understand in terms of telling the guys, all right, we have this amount of time left and we got to do this, but an agent going, okay, now go into this spot. All right, now go into this spot. Now go to this sequence. It's a little overproduced in my mind.
Do you think, though, that that's like, I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to look at it from a television production standpoint, though, and say, okay, if you want to get the facial shots, if you want to get the crowd reaction, you have to know what moves are coming next, because you have to be, like they explained, kind of 10 to 15 seconds ahead of where the match is when you're trying to produce. And having been in, and you have too, having been in production trucks for National Hockey League broadcasts, or junior hockey broadcasts, or different things. That's when you're directing and producing, that's everything that happens. You are 10 to 15 to 20 seconds ahead of what is actually happening to be able to get it right. So there's got to be a fine line in there. Like we grew up on the, you go out and you kind of call it in the ring and they know what the finish is and then that's it. But that's not TV. That's going out for big live events. Do you think it's different being on Netflix on the first one and making sure that you get all of the shots necessary? And to do that, you have to have an overproduced match?
I think there are elements that if you want to have certain parts of story you want to put over, like they were talking about the facial reactions, as you mentioned during the match, that they wanted to emphasize. But I think the big thing as well with those production trucks that you see when it comes to hockey games, we'll just use hockey as an example, is that a lot of those is, you don't know what's going to happen next. If you're somebody that's on camera or a director, you're kind of following the action along as well. And so you're kind of reacting to what's going on. And so whenever somebody scores a goal, then you have to react and find, okay, like we got to go to this camera shot so that we can get the reaction from the players. We got to go to this camera shot so that we can get this reaction from the benches. In this case with wrestling, because it's so like everything is so meticulously laid out from sequence to sequence to sequence to sequence. The reason why I say I feel like it's overproduced, it feels unnatural compared to what you would see in a regular hockey broadcast, where in a hockey broadcast, it's like they're reacting as you go. And with WWE, because everything is so structured and everything has to be so, meticulously organized, that there are times when you watch the broadcast, you could tell that this has been meticulously analyzed and it doesn't feel as natural. And one of the big things about pro wrestling is that you want to feel like what you're watching is real as opposed to everything being predetermined, right? So that's how I kind of look at it when it comes to the overproduced elements. I'm not saying, if you want to have certain things you want to put over, obviously you have the benefit of it being predetermined. You can get away with that in a sense, but it also just kind of shows just how we have to plan everything out to a T in order to get over what we want to put over.
Right. And yeah, I understand. I just think that there's a balance, and I will give them the benefit of the doubt that on the first Netflix show, you want everything to go absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And you want every shot and you want every hold to be emphasized, and you want to be ahead of the game. And so I get it. I found it really interesting, Chris Park's Abyss, that, how they went over a little bit at the end and he was so nervous, right? One of the big things in this episode was about how he was apologizing to Bruce Pritchard and apologizing to everybody else. And William Regal had to kind of step in and go, yeah, dude, it's okay.
Yeah.
But you can tell the pressure that's on. And I think that's one of the big things that I took, not that, it's 2 minutes over. It is Netflix, so you can go a little bit longer, where they tried to tell you that you can't. Like, I didn't like the fact that Bruce Pritchard's like, everyone thinks that this is Netflix, so you can just go as long as you want, and you can't. It's like, okay, I believe you that you just can't go 3 hours instead of 2, but I also know you can go over what is a hard out on network broadcasting, like the Goldberg situation.
Yep.
Where they had a hard out and they missed some of his speech because it was a hard out. That's not the case on Netflix. So I don't mind Bruce Pritchard saying, okay, well, everyone thinks this, but it's actually different. But tell us exactly what is different.
Yeah.
Don't.
And what's funny too with Bruce Pritchard saying that as well, because when that scene popped up, I was also thinking, well, that's funny you say that, Bruce, because Triple H did media talking about how they're on Netflix, and so they have the opportunity to go over if they need to.
Right.
It's like, you guys set that expectation for us, not us to you.
Right.
So no, don't scold me.
Well, I never understand people that, again, this goes back to what I said at the beginning. If you want to tell someone that you don't understand and it's different than what you think, I'm all ears. But tell me why it's different. Don't just tell me it's different and then not explain it like you're the smartest person in the world and we're just dumb and we don't get it. Because that's what Bruce Pritchard came across. Like, people think that blah, 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 but you can't. Okay, why not? Oh, I'm not going to tell you that.
No.
Like, all right.
Oh, it's fine. No, it's fine, Lee. It's fine.
Yeah, everything.
It's fine. No, it's fine. We're good.
Everything is fine.
Everything's fine.
So a lot of this first episode was built on that, the Punk Rollins and how it was produced and, how CM Punk was feeling. But again, my two big takeaways from this show were the explanation of the gorilla position, which I thought was well done, to explain to people what exactly goes on. And from that Bruce Pritchard quote, and the fact that Chris Park, who people say is, I don't know Chris at all, but people say is a nervous guy and, kind of acts like that all the time. But Zach, I really took away from the explanation of the gorilla position. Okay, it's great to know technically what happens back there and what everybody's rules are, but also the pressure that comes with whether it's Bobby Roode or whether it's Orlando Jordan or whether it's Chris Park or whoever is Shane Helms, these match producers that have to go and sit there and the pressure that's on them with all the people sitting beside them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you meant Jason Jordan there.
Jason Jordan.
Yeah. Orlando Jordan. That's the name I have not heard in a while.
Sorry about that. Jason Jordan. Thank you for correcting me.
No, it's all good. I was like, Orlando Jordan's in the company? I didn't realize that.
All right.
Good for him getting the role.
But you understand the pressure that must go. Like if Zach McGibbon has to go and produce a match and all of a sudden Triple H and Bruce Pritchard and Stephanie McMahon and Michael Hayes and all these people, and it's the beginning of first show on Netflix, the pressure that must go with, hey, you're sending people out there in Punk and Rollins and the referee, but at some point it's out of your hands.
Yeah.
Man, that's not easy to be in their situation. So I thought Rhea Ripley, Chris Park came across very real in this show to me. And quite frankly, I thought that this was a good first show into the series to be like, okay, maybe it's going to give me something as a hardcore wrestling fan that I wasn't aware of. I had a pretty good feeling coming out of this first show.
Yeah, I didn't mind this first episode at all. I thought it was a good general overview. There wasn't anything really biting here in the first episode. It was kind of followed some of the tropes you usually see when it comes to these kind of shows. But when we got into some of the meat, as you mentioned, and looking more into how a match is produced and everything that goes into it, that was interesting. And some of the character analysis that they did, as mentioned before with Rhea Ripley, they also did one for CM Punk where there's a little bit of a gap that they didn't talk about with Punk in terms of his return to wrestling. That was noted. But nonetheless, in terms of what they were able to put on the screen and what they showed, I liked it. It was not too bad. It was one of those deals like, all right, I still had the feeling that there was some stuff that we weren't seeing everything for, but the stuff that we did get, I was like, all right, I came away thinking I got something out of it.
The show finishes with Triple H saying there's an opportunity for everybody on the card. You always have the opportunity to get to that next level. And I ask you, do you believe him?
If you're a certain talent, maybe, sure. Maybe for other talents, probably not. But
folks, let me translate that for you. No,
no, I don't believe. Old Hunter Hearst Helmsley there on that one.
Is that what you call him?
Oh, sorry, I misspoke. Humble Hearst Helmsley. I mean, he's just such a humble guy that Paul Levesque. So Humble Hearst Helmsley, just continue to show how humble he is. And I imagine we'll continue to see just how humble that man is in the next episode of Unreal.
We will do our very best to humbly bring you episode 2 and all of the episodes. WWE Unreal. Show number 1 in the books. I'm Lee Versage. For Zach McGibbon, thanks for listening to WWE Unreal. This is wrestling.